So, one must demonstrate a method to prove beyond any doubt that in the event that evolution is not true, it can be shown to be such. If evolution be true, and this method of falsification be valid, then by demonstrating the falsification method to be unable to disprove evolution, we would confirm evolution to be right. Alternatively, if the falsification method is valid and demonstrates that Darwin's validation method does not prove evolution, then evolution is false indeed. Firstly, the hypothesis. If evolution is incorrect, then it can be demonstrated to be so by using both living and dead plants and animals. The following is the way to do so and the logical alternative to the theory. The fossil record can be used as well, but not as evolution theory would have us believe. In order to properly falsify something, all biases must be removed. Since assuming something is correct without knowing how to prove it false is akin to the blind person who cannot confirm the color of someone's car.
Claiming that you can't use the fossil record is absurd. If I'm understanding this correctly, you're claiming it because of bias. Science is a neutral entity that looks at the facts. If anything, science is biased against itself. Although bias again is not the right word, as science is neutral, and I promise not out to get you. On a side note, not that you would care about such things, but if you have ever seen the process to submit a paper to a peer-reviewed journal, or seen what scientific scrutiny is, you would know that it is a painstaking trial by fire. Papers often take years to write and are rejected and revised dozens of times. Every detail is ironed out. Alternative possibilities are considered and addressed. An incredible amount of work, blood, sweat, and tears goes into this. Not that you have any interest on the subject, though.
Since evolution has not correctly been shown how to be falsified, as will be demonstrated, we must be open to other possibilities by way of logic, and ultimately reject evolution by way of evidence, should the evidence lead us in such a direction. If evolution be not true, the only explanation for the appearance of varied life on the planet is intelligent design. This would predict that all life since the initial creation has been in a state of entropy since their initial creation, which is the opposite of evolution. If this be true, then animals and plants are not increasing in genetic complexity or new traits as evolution theory would have us believe, but are in fact losing information. This would explain why humans no longer have room for their wisdom teeth, and why the human appendix is not essential anymore. The only objection to this claim that evolution theory would propose is that evolution does not always increase the genetic complexity and traits of an organism, but rather sometimes decreases them as well. This objection is only made because we have only ever actually observed entropy in living creatures, which suits the creation model far better than evolution, which shall be demonstrated.
Okay, a few quick points here. Just look at the logical fallacies for a second. Alright, and we're moving on. Venom now is pointing out a few small changes in humans, but it's not really clarifying what's taking place. Indeed, he only pauses long enough to say that there is one claim against his idea of these vestigial organs, which is that the evolutionary theory does not always increase genetic complexity and traits. A quick trip to Wikipedia should help us out here. Just the table of contents on the wiki page for evolution should be enough. Mitigation, sex and recombination, population genetics, natural selection, genetic drift, gene flow, adaptation, coevolution, cooperation, speciation, and barriers between breeding species. Yeah, none of these ideas are able to explain wisdom teeth and vestigial organs. Let's take facts from another, totally irrelevant school of science. Now, I must admit, I was originally caught off guard by this. I spent entirely too long looking for it. The other school of science he drags in is actually physics and entropy. I kept looking around for some sort of biology entropy, and it really doesn't exist. The only entropy I knew before this video was related to thermodynamics, so off to Wiki we go. Here, let me explain. Entropy is a measure of unavailability of a system's energy to do work. Wiki also tells us in the thermodynamic system, a universe consisting of surroundings and systems and made up of quantities of matter, its pressure differences, density differences, and temperature differences all tend to equalize over time, simply because the equilibrium state has a higher probability or more possible combinations of microstates than any other. I'm glad I got the excuse to touch up on my thermodynamics, but the sad truth is they have no relevance to evolution or intelligent design. All of the before-named evolutionary terms would probably be better suited to explaining vestigial organs, population changes, differentiation, and the other things that are not explained by thermodynamics.
If the creation model is true, we can make verifiable predictions that disprove evolution. For example, the creation model states that life was created diversified to begin with distinct kinds of animals, by a supernatural creator that did not evolve himself but rather always existed. Without going into the debate on how such a being is possible to exist, it must be said that either everything came from nothing or something always existed. To those who say the universe always existed, the claim of this hypothesis is that the creator always existed, which is equally as viable for the previous logic. In order to demonstrate that the creator is responsible for life and created life diversified to begin with, the word kind must be defined. A kind is the original prototype of any ancestral line. That is to say, if God created 2 lions and 2 cheetahs, these are distinct kinds. In this scenario, these 2 cats do not share a common ancestor, as they were created separately, and therefore are not the same kind despite similar appearance and design. If this is the case, evolution theory is guilty of using homologous structures as evidence of common ancestry, and then using homologous structures to prove common ancestry. This is circular reasoning.
When Venom starts talking about kinds in this section, he starts off by saying God creates 2 lions and 2 cheetahs. In this next slide, Venom says if God creates 2 lions and 2 cheetahs, then evolutionary theory is guilty of using circular logic to compare homologous structures. Let me say this again a little bit slower. If God creates 2 lions and 2 cheetahs, they do not have a common ancestor. Then evolution is using circular logic to compare homologous structures. This is a non sequitur argument fallacy. These 2 statements are not related at all. The evolution model doesn't even mention God, so why would an evolution argument be guilty of using a point that God created anything in any form? Sometimes I wonder if Venom can even hear himself speak.
The idea of kinds is in direct contrast to evolution theory, which says all cats share a common ancestor, which the creation model does not hold to be true. If evolution theory is true, the word kind is a superficial label that does not exist, because beyond our classifications, there would be no clear identifiable division among animals or plants, since all plants and animals would therefore share a common ancestor. The word kind can only be applied in the context of the creation model, but cannot be dismissed as impossible due to the evolutionary bias, simply because evolution has not been properly validated, nor can it be held to be true until it can correctly be shown to be impossible to falsify. One must look at the evidence without bias and conclude based on contemporary evidence, not speculation, if indeed evolution is the cause of the diversity of species or not. It must also be demonstrated if the clear and distinct species do or do not share a common ancestor with each other, regardless